I am David Sanford, Chairman of Sanford Heisler Sharp McKnight, and I am delighted to be here today with Andrew Macurdy. Andrew is a partner in our New York office, heads up our trial practice nationwide. Andrew, it's great to see you.
David, great to be here with you.
So, Andrew, tell me about your life, starting out with where you grew up, your childhood experiences, your formative childhood experiences, leading to college.
Well, I grew up in the great state of New Jersey, which you can see in the background here, in South Jersey. My dad was a captain in the Air Force and then went into business. My mom's family ran a diner down in South Jersey, a New Jersey highway diner. And I have one brother growing up, was involved in sports. Parents really instilled the idea of hard work and practice into me and my brother. So worked really hard in school. Ultimately, ended up going to college not too far away, and then went straight through to law school.
So where'd you go to college?
Went to Swarthmore College.
What was your focus there?
Economics and political science. And then really thought about what I wanted to do next. And law school, no one else had been a lawyer in my family, but I thought that law school was a way where you can work on solving complex problems, whether it be through litigation or legislation or consulting. I thought that law school gave you that frame of reference for the world to really help people. And so I ended up going straight through to Harvard for law school.
And when you were at Harvard, what did you focus on? What kinds of courses were you drawn to?
I really particularly enjoyed in my first year, and much of the first year curriculum, as you know, is set. But my legislation and regulation class, which dealt with administrative law, statutory interpretation, that was one of the early times where I really became interested in government work. And I think in a big picture sense, in law school, you're learning about the way that power is allocated, the way it's decentralized or centralized. You're learning about systems of checks and balances, which really interested me, and it gave me an interest for getting involved in government work, which I ultimately would go into.
And so, what did that lead to after Harvard?
After Harvard, worked at a law firm, worked to pay off some loans. And then ended up getting a job clerking for a couple judges in New York City and in Newark, New Jersey.
Who were the judges?
Miriam Cederbaum in SDNY and Michael Shigaris in the Third Circuit, who's now the chief judge of the Third Circuit. And then I went to go be a prosecutor. I was living in Jersey City at the time when I finished clerking, and I had done some trials at the law firm, and I really thought the idea of being a prosecutor in the community where I live, trying to improve it and getting to try cases would be an interesting experience and rewarding experience.
So definitely want to follow up on being a prosecutor. But before we get there, one thing that has always been important to me is the clerkship experience. We have about 60 lawyers, the vast majority of whom have clerked at the state or federal level. Many, like you, have had 2 clerkships. Talk about your clerkship experience and how important that was to you in your career.
It was a really formative experience for me. I came from a law firm, so I had some legal background actually practicing, which was very helpful getting to clerk after that. But ultimately, it was a way to see these hard problems, legal issues, civil, mainly civil matters that a clerk was working on. And to dig in and talk with a really smart lawyer, the judge, about how they should be resolved. And at a certain point, a light bulb goes off in your head, or at least did for me, that, hey, I can solve these problems. I can figure out how the law works here and what is an appropriate outcome. And I thought that was a really confidence instilling experience for me.
When I clerked, I came from an academic background. I taught for a number of years before going to law school. And I think when I started my clerkship, my writing was still very academic. And there's a very big difference between academic writing and legal writing. And it took me about half of my clerkship before I finally got it and things clicked in. When I got, voluminous edits from my judge, who was a very invasive editor and a really good judge, Judge Gladys Kessler in the district court. in Washington,
Right.
D.C. Did you have a similar experience? I mean, did you have an adjustment period of writing during your clerkship?
I certainly, my writing improved dramatically when I was there. And I think the process of working with the judge, sharing it with co-clerks to go over your writing and thinking about every little issue or blind spot that could come up along the way, I think, really was an improvement over the course of the clerkship.
And how would you characterize the distinction between a district court clerkship and a circuit court clerkship for those students out there who are thinking perhaps of doing one or the other?
Right. So the district court, you're there, you're having evidentiary hearings, things are moving faster. The workload, in my experience, was higher. And so there's certainly a lot you can learn from being there in court where stuff is happening on the trial level. The appellate clerkship is a slower pace. You have more time to sit and think about things. Legal issues have been dealt with on the trial level, so they've been kicked around and teed up in a sense more for the appellate decision maker. And so both are important experiences, and I think that my experience on the trial court certainly gave me important perspective at the appellate level, and I enjoyed both. And certain personalities might gravitate towards other ones, but both I thought were valuable.
So you talk about then becoming a prosecutor. What cases did you prosecute, and how did you find that experience?
So I started out on a trial team at Hudson County Prosecutor's Office in Jersey City, doing all sorts of state crimes, from assaults, burglaries, drug offenses, weapons offenses. Worked my way up to work on some shootings and homicides, and I saw on a ground level the state criminal justice system in the trenches. I saw how it worked, saw how it didn't work, and it was certainly a formative experience for me.
When you say you worked on teams, were you the lead prosecutor? Were you the lead trial attorney? How does that work there?
So this may be specific to a New Jersey courthouse, but we had 2 prosecutors assigned to a courtroom. So you're dealing a lot with the same judge, the same public defenders, which makes for an interesting dynamic that you're working with the same group of actors in the system on case after case. That was where I really cut my teeth in the courtroom, trying different cases. Some were 1 or 2 day trials, some were 1 week or 2 week trials. I got to cross-examine witnesses, give addresses to the jury, and I learned a lot about what it means to be a trial lawyer.
Did you find that your juries, by and large, were attentive?
Yes, I think that the jury system is a powerful institution in the American legal system. I think that juries are there to try and do the right thing, and there's just a real common sense element to juries that's extremely important in our system.
Do the judges allow jurors to take notes?
Sometimes.
And sometimes not.
Yes, I think it varies by judge.
And why do you think it is that some judges say no to note-taking requests?
I believe that the conventional take on this is that a judge might be afraid that a certain juror's notes would become so salient in the deliberations that it would overcome the memories of the other jurors, and it would be sway the jury too much one way rather than having a more collective focus.
What's your view on that?
Well, my personal opinion is that I would like to have my notes so I can remember exactly what happened. So I think that would be my own personal bias.
That would be my bias as well, and I think that should be the bias for judges because jurors simply, like anyone, remember more when they hear and are active listeners by taking notes. If you're just expecting a juror to sit there all day long without taking notes and try to, have in their memory the relevant, most salient facts of a 2-week trial, you're delusional. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Jurors are going to remember things differently. And unless they're, asking for transcripts and the judges allow transcripts go back of certain key testimony, it becomes a real problem. So I agree with you. I think that notes should be allowed, recognizing the risk of having that be given potentially too much weight. but I'd rather do that than not allow jurors.
There's a lot of information being thrown at jurors in any case, from a relatively straightforward criminal case to a complex civil case, and there's only so much that people can retain. So anything you can do to help that happen, I think, is important. Yeah.
So what was your next position after the prosecutor's office?
After that, I went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, became a federal prosecutor in Newark, and continued to build on the experience that I had trying cases in Hudson County, but also worked on bigger investigations, financial crimes, gun trafficking offenses. And then COVID hit while I was there, and there was a lot of focus on fraud on the federal pandemic relief programs. And I learned a lot about investigating while I was at the federal government.
How long did you do that?
About another 3 years. Mm-hmm. But it was a forced labor case involving an individual who had been kept by the defendant in their home for close to a decade without pay, without a proper room, without the ability to leave. And so it was a very tragic circumstance.
What happened after that? What was your next job after the federal prosecutor's office?
After that, I had the opportunity to go to the state attorney general's office in New Jersey. So I hit the local government, the federal government, and the state government in New Jersey. And this role was as a counsel to the attorney general. So I wasn't in the courtroom anymore. I was working on public safety policy for the state. And I viewed it as a real opportunity to take what I had seen in the courtroom every day and to try to make the system work better, make it more efficient, make it more fair, make people safer, and did a lot of work on gun violence statewide, on auto theft. Ended up doing spending a lot of time on how first responders respond to mental health crises, and ended up putting together a program where we took a police officer, put him in a car with a mental health worker to respond together to those types of calls, which are very difficult, can often end in not great outcomes and uses of force. And so we try to make the system more efficient and more clinical in that sense.
So when you talk about having this view while you were at Harvard of being a public servant, of being fascinated by government, wanting to partake in government, you lived that life for the better part of a decade in local and state government and in federal government.
Yeah, and I tell people who are thinking, about how their careers will unfold, young people, you have like a loose idea in the back of your mind about what could happen. And I certainly had a loose idea in the back of my mind about working in government and seeing things on the line, as a prosecutor or something else, and then using that to go, do policy and improve the system. And it luckily has kind of worked out that way for me.
Yeah. So after that position, what happened? The last position that you just described in state government.
Right. After that, I had the opportunity to come work at Sanford Heisler.
And we are the beneficiaries of that, to be sure.
Right. So it's been an amazing experience, and I view working at Sanford Heisler as a continuation of my work as a prosecutor, because at this firm, we're looking to work on cases that advance the public interest and try and make things more just, more fair. And, we're bringing cases, and the prosecutor brings cases in the public interest, and that's what we do here at Sanford Heisler.
We are what's called the private attorney general of so many cases, right? The government can't take cases that they otherwise might be interested in taking because they have limited resources. So they incentivize the private bar to take on those cases. And that's a lot of what we do in the civil rights context and the public interest more generally. You've done a few trials with us, one of which involved Robert DeNiro. Talk about that.
So Chase Robinson had asserted gender discrimination claims against the production company and was then subsequently terminated from the company, which sounded in retaliation. And so ultimately her claims that were at issue in the lawsuit were gender discrimination and retaliation.
Okay. And what did the jury hold?
The jury ultimately rejected the claims against her because the production company had brought claims against her for being a disloyal employee, for stealing money from the company.
And we won that.
Jury rejected those claims and then awarded a significant sum for Ms. Robinson on her claims of retaliation and discrimination.
And as I remember it, and as you mentioned, a very important piece to Chase Robinson was the ability for her to tell her story to the world, because she was so damaged reputationally, so damaged professionally, that she felt the need to tell her story.
Right.
And she was able to do that at trial. And a lot of our clients don't want to do that and would prefer to settle before trial, which is perfectly understandable. But some people really want that public vindication. Talk about public vindication in the context of trials in our context, in the civil context, and compare it to what happens as a prosecutor on behalf of the government when you go to trial.
Yeah, I think a really important part of trial and the whole jury trial system is allowing people to tell their stories. And that's what Chase Robinson wanted, and that's what many other people want, including victims of crimes. So I view our work here as helping facilitate people to tell their stories, to tell stories to juries and to be heard. And so that's really not that different from allowing the stories of victims in criminal cases to be heard in victims' families, so that it is told in the public, so that people hear it, and we can start the work of healing and trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I think there's a lot of parallels in the work we're doing here to the criminal jury process.
So you've described a fascinating journey, a journey that started in the private sector, that moved to local and state government and federal government sectors for about a decade, that moved back into the private sector in our firm, Sanford Heisler Sharp McKnight. And now you're straddling both worlds, the private and the public world. Talk about your latest public adventure.
Yeah, so I decided after doing some volunteering on political campaigns that I would get involved myself in the electoral process. I think that we need good leaders who are going to try and do the right thing at all levels of government. So this past year, I ran for the state assembly in New Jersey. I live in a district that had 20-year incumbents between the two assembly people, and with the support of the firm, which I'm very thankful for, because I think Sanford Heisler stands for public service in all its different forms, was able to win this past November. So I was sworn into the New Jersey State Assembly this past January, and now have two different jobs going on, trying to improve people's lives in different ways.
Well, you're well situated to do that. We supported you, as you said, for state assembly. We're honored to have you lead up our trial practice nationwide, honored to call you a partner, and wish you the very best in public service for the rest of your life.
Thank you, David. It's really an honor. Thank you.